Hello beautiful people and welcome to a non-review of Graven. Why is this not a review? Because I never finished it. Not even close. Back in 2020, a little show called Realms Deep dropped a trailer that looked like the spiritual successor to Hexen and Heretic. A game people were craving for during the height of boomer shooter fever, and at the end of the year, a short demo was released. It was good. Sure, there were some bugs and things felt a little rough, but there's no way the final product would be this shoddy, right? Graven is a hard game to talk about without the giant IP-eating elephant in the room. Embracer Group. They acquired Slipgate Ironworks, the developer of Graven, and many other companies, expanding out further over the years until they become some umbral beast of immense strength and power that could not be stopped. But then 2023 happened, and the layoffs started coming, once, twice, and then many more times. End of the year saw Slipgate and 3D Realms hit with layoffs, along with a difficult year where they released the much maligned port of Kingpin that left people stunned at the low quality. They also released the much less reported but very damning demo for Phantom Fury, the 3D sequel to Ion Fury, which, putting it nicely, wasn't very good. Realms Deep 2023, Graven was announced to leave early access in January, along with Wrath Aeons of Ruin a month later. Both games having troubled developments over the years. However, looking at the patch notes for both, one can speculate that in fact, they were not so much released as dropped. And I don't like making speculations, but it does seem like Graven was put out the door due to financial troubles. And what we have is an unfinished product. I don't like Graven. That's not to say I hate it, but I wasn't enjoying my time. If it wasn't for my commitment to this video, I wouldn't have gotten very far. The kindness I can say is it's a mess, but at worst, it's a rushed product. There's a lot wrong here that I did not expect. Issues I had back when I played the game in early access that weren't fixed. But since this isn't a review, I wanted to only list 3 things this game does wrong, interspersing some positives for you to find, like how I had to dig for them while playing. One being that you can make the dog read from arcane tomes. Graven looks great, capturing that late 90s aesthetic of his forebears, showcasing environments that bring back the feel of Hexen 2 with the packed interiors of Deus Ex. Levels are so spacious and walking around them with the environmental audio makes the first act feel like an engrossing fantasy dystopia. But there are a lot of glitches. Pop-ins for grass, floating objects, so many floating objects. It's the kind of things that feel like they should have been ironed out long ago. Most egregious is when using one of the main gameplay elements of fire, burning crates, barrels, some of which explode, and barred up passages. But every time you do, it's like you just woke up a bunch of sleeping cats and they need to get out. And this happens every time, because for me at least, burning everything became a compulsion, not just because it's fun watching them twerk for the first hour, but you need all the ammo and mana you can get, so it gets old pretty fast. Heh. And it's a pointless ability because barrels can be hit or shot to explode. It's really just an arbitrary tool to open certain passages. The lighting does about the same thing, except it's more useful in that it can stun enemies. This means at least 30% of your time will be spent hitting, burning, or blowing up every breakable object you can find in the area. Luckily you can hold E to have them drawn towards you, though this could have been the default, just having things drawn towards you as you walk around, except it doesn't work on items that weren't dropped, like these coins under the table, that I can't reach. This is literally leaving money under the table. Let's talk about positives again. Levels are large, filled with secrets that are actually useful, and interconnected, which makes the areas in Act 1 feel like part of a larger world. But there is no fast travel, which in itself is fine, but the game has a checkpoint almost every 5 feet, and the sound of it activating will drive you crazy. If you walk 2 feet away and come back, it will react. The sound of a crow has never been more annoying than that song they did with Vanessa Carlton, the one I hear every time I stand in line to get my meds. Now, some people might ask, what's the problem? This just makes the world more immersive. Sure, but even Dark Souls didn't have you start back at the main hub if you save and exit the game. The checkpoints? They do nothing, except when you die. The game having you run through the same areas just because I had to turn it off for a bit is asking a lot from people's time. Especially when your character forgets their asthma inhaler at home. The phrase, "it's a feature not a bug," jumps to mind, but I'd rather the phrase, "run Forrest run," have been implemented. The game itself says it's meant to be played slower and more deliberately, but your character has a stamina bar, and if there's one thing I'm growing tired of in modern gaming, it's the stamina bar just being an inconvenience. There is no reason for it being here other than slowing you down. Running, jumping, and hitting takes stamina. I can accept that last one, but the first two in a game with combat this fast seems like a ludicrous mistake. You will constantly be out of breath going around the areas, and even though the game tells you to slow down, I have to go back to the hub to buy more health potions because I use them all to run faster. Also be careful of puddles when running, because being near a small puddle will drastically halve your speed, so zombies can either swarm you or you end up late for mom's birthday. Remember the card. And when you have to swim, it becomes incredibly annoying. Your character is beach ball buoyant, and diving down just feels weirdly difficult. If you go through the patch notes, you see one of the things they patched out was the heavy breathing when you are out of stamina, because you will hear it so much, it becomes the background noise to your life. Wait, let me calm down for a second. I'm getting winded. The moment I realized that I couldn't sprint while strafing or backwards, I understood what the game wanted to be, a slower, more methodical RPG with some action elements. But that's not what the game is. It's a boomer shooter with half-decent combat. Speaking of... combat is kind of fun. Sometimes. Melee combat sucks. Just ignore it unless you equip the white stone on the staff, which makes enemies fly through the air. It's neat. The biggest problem for me is the weapons don't feel good to use. The wrist arrow, which takes place with your standard pistol, feels like it has no impact and just sounds like you're throwing wet toilet paper at people. The other weapons don't fare much better, minus the peat launcher, because explosions. They sound great and help with fitting the herd of zombies. And expect plenty of zombies. Plenty of zombies. So much that I started running past them because they feel so unsatisfying to fight. They will jump if you're close, but there is no lead up, and most times they jump past you, making you twirl around in confusion. Later we get the zombie adjacent enemy, a skeleton lead, who are the only enemy that seems to be affected by being set on fire, but also very ineffective except for the ones that shoot ice arrows. Skeletons are at least more fun to fight, but then we get the Urukai, which are these giant warriors that get confused and stuck on objects. Completely laughable. I don't think I ever got hit by one. Much later in the game, cultists show up and they also run around in an odd pattern, throwing knives at you, or in the case of the ones that wield bows, fire a rapid-fire poison spell that will most likely instantly kill you if you get close. Lastly, and least important, I want to highlight these things. Easily one of the worst enemies in gaming. They hide in the air, taking pot shots at you without really making a sound, and once their poison hits the ground, it spreads. There are moments when fighting is fun, but it's not because of the enemies. It's all the level design and how you can run, walk around dodging them and taking leaps. Almost like the game decided halfway it's an action-packed FPS. Kind of like Heretic or Hexen 2. Switching between weapons and magic, stunning, burning, and blowing them away can be a lot of fun. Once you get into the heat of it, but running out of stamina can just stop you dead in your tracks. Once the new enemy types dry up after a few hours, the combat becomes kind of stale. The little I played of Act 2 had more zombies and a crystal launcher that just didn't feel good to use at all. And if you want to say the words, it gets better later on, please don't. I played 6 hours, and if it takes that long to make the game fun, then it's already lost. I have a long list of negatives that I didn't want to go through, because ultimately, I didn't like the game, and I didn't want to harp on it too much. It was a big disappointment, and I don't plan on finishing it in the future unless I do a follow-up video, and I know what some people are saying. They can still fix it, but it's not something that can be so easily fixed. It's a game that was most likely rushed out due to corporate overreach, and seemingly the vision they had wasn't concrete to begin with. But before I end this on a negative note, there's 2 recommendations I want to give. Firstly, Arthurian Legends. It's very underrated and didn't get nearly enough coverage. Check out one of my old videos to see if it's up to your liking. Then Hands of Necromancy, which feels like an unofficial sequel to Hexen. You'll be going through levels, solving puzzles, coming back, going into other levels, seeing how what you've done in different worlds affect each other. It's a lot of fun and I had a great time with it, and it's a game I also don't see enough coverage on. Lastly, they had 2 years to fix some of the things, and they still don't work. Is another year really going to be enough?